I am Dariella Nieves, and you are Kicking It With Me. Welcome to the Kicking It With Dare show. Today, I have a guest named Trina L. Martin, and I'm so excited to talk to her because looking at things that she does and what she's been through, I almost feel like we already know each other. So I'm really hype about this. Trina Martin is a speaker and podcaster in Houston, Texas, and she's motivating women and youth to strive for their dreams. She has a long background and career in IT as a programmer and an analyst, and she's also a United States naval officer who has been proudly serving this country for 30 years. Whether you're a woman seeking direction for the next chapter of your life, or you're a youth that needs a role model, maybe you're a veteran woman that's in transition to civil service, a minority youth that's needing encouragement to pursue STEM, or someone looking for professional growth and development, that's what we're all about here. Her passion is inspiring others to develop confidence in themselves, to strive for their dreams, even when it seems impossible. And Lord, don't we know we've been through things and we feel like, am I ever going to get through this? Is this ever going to work? Am I doing the right thing? So we're going to get into all that. She also has a podcast, and it's called Trina Talk. It's an inspirational talk show that is based on wisdom that she's gained through her life experiences. And it's for women who want motivation and inspiration that need to go to the next level in their lives. So welcome to the show, Trina.
Thank you, Dare. Thank you for having me.
You know, so many things that you and I have in common is that I'm not someone that has been in the service. I've been married to someone in the service, but not actually serving my country myself. So I first want to thank you for serving. And then I also want to say that the things we have in common is the background in IT, because I'm a technical writer and you're an analyst and a programmer. And then you've got the whole podcast thing. You're motivating women and youth. It's like, yes, this is like my kinship right here. I want to talk to you about your journey and some of those insights that you have, because on your show, Trina Talk, I know you like to encourage and inspire women as well. And so I already know this is going to be an awesome show. So first, let's talk more about your background and your journey as far as how you became Trina L. Martin and, where life has taken you as far as getting you from the career that you had to, motivating and speaking to women.
Okay, well, thank you. And you were reading my bio, and I was sitting here going, I do a lot.
Yeah.
Well, so just to give you a brief background about myself, I grew up in Chicago, born and raised there, youngest of 4 children, and I grew up with a very verbally abusive mother, and I think more so to me than my siblings. So that verbal abuse kind of fueled me to be very driven, wanting to succeed, because my whole thing growing up was I wanted to get away from her. I wanted to succeed, so I knew I wouldn't have to go back to her. So that kind of fueled my fire as far as succeeding. So I was the first one to leave Chicago and leave home. I was the first one in my family to go to college. And since then, I've had nieces and nephews to attend. But that's my beginning. So going on, I left Chicago to go to college. Mother couldn't finance it, so I had to work and finance my own way, which led me, after a year in college, led me to joining the Army. So I joined the Army because, of course, you want to be all you can be. You can get the GI Bill. It'll help you through college. So that was my reason. I said, I'm going to join the Army and do 4 years and pay for my education, and then I'll be done. Well, when I joined the Army back in 1990, Desert Storm was going on. So when I finished basic training, and this was one of the things, and it's funny because I tell this story to people who've been in the military and they laugh, but my recruiter, being a recruiter, did the fast one on me, right? He said, oh, well, we have this bonus and you can go in as a chemical specialist. Well, I was 19, I was young and I was dumb. I said, oh, is that like a chemist? I'm going to be in a lab with a white coat. And he said, yeah, that's exactly what you're going to be doing. I said, okay. So the bonus looked good. And I said, well, this would be great. Well, little did I know the chemical specialist was nuclear biological chemicals. So it's 1990, Desert Storm is going on. Who do they need? They need NBC people like me. So long story short, I got called up to go at the last minute. They said, we don't need you. Um, you're okay. So I said, okay, well, this is not what I thought. I got out of the Army and transferred to the Navy because it was more as far as along the career path that I wanted. Finished college, ended up in the military, in the Navy, and 4 years had passed and I'm still in the Navy. Did 14 years as enlisted, and now I'm a naval officer, which I never thought that I could accomplish. It wasn't even on my radar to do, but that has led me to so many places in my life. So being in the service and being an officer has put me in leadership positions, and I've got out of college with my degree in computer science. I worked in IT, as you said, for over 20 years. I programmed. I worked for some big companies, programming on their system. And now I'm at a point where I want to follow my passion. I want to follow my passion, which is speaking, and I do the podcast. And that's kind of, in a nutshell, how I became who I am.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think we all have something in our lives that we look back and we say, wow, or someone had told me that this is where I would be now. I would be like, no, you're crazy. You're lying. There's no way. There's no way. But I think that, God, life, the universe, however you want to call it, has a way of working things out for our good. And that is really inspirational to hear about. And I do want to talk about the speaking to women. But first, I don't want to gloss over the fact that you are heavy into STEM. And if you've not heard of STEM, STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And those are four industries, subjects, career fields that are sorely lacking for women of color. And so STEM is very important that I'm speaking now as a Black woman, and I'm sure Trina could speak as a Black woman, that there is an underrepresentation of Black women and women of color in the STEM fields. And I want to talk about that a little bit because I know there was a couple of years where my daughter is in high school now in a regular public school, but I used to homeschool her. When I lived in Atlanta for a while, I was in an area that I really didn't care for the schooling, and I was trying to get her in a different school, but it didn't work out. So I homeschooled her, and STEM courses were not my strong suit. And so what I did was I would teach her all the English and all the stuff I was good at. And then I would drive her to a independent, Christian-based STEM school that taught her those four subjects. And so I wanted to make sure that she really got the knowledge that she needed, even though she wasn't in regular school. And I think that the STEM topics are not really pushed for Black girls. So let's talk about the STEM component a little bit.
You're so right with that. And it's funny because in Chicago, I went to a technical high school, and that kind of opened my doors to STEM. And of course, at that time in the 80s, they weren't calling it STEM. So I ended up going to college, getting a degree in computer science. And it was something I was very intentional about that because at the time, there weren't many universities that actually offered a computer science degree, a bachelor's in computer science. And I still don't think there's many because you have information security, you have cybersecurity, you have all these things, but the actual computer science degree, there's not a lot of universities that offer that degree. And I wanted to do it because I knew at the time doing research, there weren't many women that had that degree, and especially not women of color, and there weren't many women who were programmers. And that's what I found in my career, 20 years of doing it, was there weren't a lot of women, and I was always either the only one or one of maybe one or two other Black women who were programmers. It was funny because I would go places, and of course people said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a programmer. And I would get the, oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, well, why is that so surprising? But looking back now, I see that I was a rarity because that's not something that people saw. It was more of a male dominated field. So I'm so glad that nowadays, here we are, 2019, that STEM is big, but there's a lot of places that are trying to push STEM, especially for the people of color, whether it be Black people or the Latinos or whatever. And I think that's really it's it's imperative because of the way the world is now. Everything is technology, everything. And this new generation coming along, and in the future, they're going to need to have that skill set to move forward in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone's interested in it. Everyone loves apps and things like that. And so if you are a mom listening or a parent listening that has children that are in any way, shape, or form interested in apps or development or coding or anything that comes out of those things, it would behoove you to look up community programs that have this for youth, because as we are speaking right now, it is springtime and everyone is kind of looking for what are my kids going to be doing in the summer when school is out. And so that's a great option for you. I know in Atlanta and several other chapters throughout the US, there's an organization called Black Girls Code. And so if you are Black and you are interested in having your kid explore this a little bit, even if they don't want to go full on it, just, maybe like a 1 week camp or a 1 day camp, you can check them out. I'm talking about them because it's a place that I brought my daughter. I'm not familiar with all of them, but I know that there's lots of technical summer camps and summer programs that kids can get involved in. Again, whether it's, for the whole summer or just for a week or maybe even a day, like 9 to 5 type deal. I just think that STEM is very important, that people of color and especially women of color, they understand the opportunities that could come from knowing that. And in a way, it's a little sad that you were one of a few that were doing it at that time. But in a way, it's good because now you're able to share your knowledge. I know when I was introducing you, I was talking about the fact that you encourage youth to pursue STEM.
Yes, I like encouraging the youth just in general, but STEM, of course, is a passion of mine because, like I said, nowadays, like you said, apps and people are getting on the app store and developing apps for any and everything. And some of these things are taking off, but it's a skill set because just like cybersecurity is big and everybody's being hacked, it's not a matter of, if, it's a matter of when. I feel the same way about STEM. It's something that you have to know. You have to be in science, technology. You have to know math. And math is one of those things that, regardless of what you do, you have to know math because at the basic level, you have to know how to count your money when you get paid.
Yeah, for sure. Look, being an entrepreneur will remind you whether or not you're good at math. That's one thing. And another thing is, at the end of the year, when you're doing your taxes, I am an entrepreneur, but I also work for a company. And so I get a W-2, I get one, and that one is pretty decent. And I have to sometimes, wait. And I'm like doing the math, trying to figure, okay, which one of these is going to be in box one? Which one's good, doing my
Hmm.
doing my taxes and stuff, like just trying to, see if I can get ahead of it a little bit. But yeah, it is very important. And, personal finance, which is a little bit off topic here, but as far as math, personal finance, to my knowledge, is not taught in school. It's definitely not taught in high school because my daughter hasn't said anything to me about it. I have to talk to her about balancing that proverbial checkbook. So, like you said, when you get paid, when you're paying for things, you have to be able to know if there's a mistake being made. One decimal point makes a big difference.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. And a lot of people say, oh, well, it's only a penny off. Well, a penny off 1,000 times adds up. So it's not insignificant, but I'm very passionate about it. And I have a daughter getting ready to enter into high school and a son in middle school. So I'm always encouraging them to look at the STEM. And I think my son is going to be on that path. My daughter already has her path and is not in STEM, but that's fine. But it's very critical nowadays because everything is automated. I mean, we walk around with computers in our pockets, right? Our phones are basic little computers. We can do everything on our phone. And the youth of today are the people who are going to be working for the Googles and the Apple and the Samsungs and those big giants who are just leading the way for our future.
Hmm. And I dare say they're going to make new companies that will replace one or two of them. MySpace is long gone, okay,
Mhm.
but Facebook could be long gone, and it could be another thing. We have no clue what is in their brains, what will come from this, next generation Z and whatever the generation is after that. I've then lost count with the letters, but I think it's a fascinating thing, what you do to encourage youth, and I think it's very important. When I talk to youth, I talk to them more about self-esteem and encouraging them not to be subjected to what they see in the media and following reality TV stars and thinking, being Instagram famous is the way to go, but really using their brains and being confident in their talents and abilities, whether, it's in STEM, like what you talk about, or, anything else. I know you talk about other things too, but I just really have a problem with girls looking at media because, like you said, they are so tech driven and looking at the wrong kind of tech to get their value, saying, okay, well, I've got to like physically look a certain way or wear this makeup or have this weave or do certain things that are, in my opinion, not ladylike in order to get attention so that I can really like be something or feel valued. And I just think that this particular age, it's a lot worse because they have grown up like that. They have grown up with reality TV already being set up. They've grown up with having social media already set up, YouTube and all that already set up. So it just behooves us, as women in general, to make sure that our kids, not just our girls, but all of our kids, understand that your value doesn't come from what you post or what you look like. It comes from being a good person and helping people with the skills and things that you have and what you know.
Oh, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. And that's one of the things that I try to stress, first of all, to my children. But when I go out and speak to youth, that's another thing because you're right. Everything is reality TV nowadays. And, I'm not going to mention any names, but there are people in the media that their 15 minutes of fame have led to 15 years. And people think, oh, that's who I want to be. And I want to be like that. And they should be like themselves. And they have a lot more to give.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to shift a little bit into your work with women. I don't know about you, but some of these topics that I just mentioned about things that I think kids should be focused on instead of what they really are focused on, I think that when some of those things are left unchecked, that they have that low self-esteem as women. So they can be in their 30s, 40s, 50s and have issues with setting boundaries with family members or in relationships or having, a lack of self-confidence or issues with body image. Have you seen that as well?
I have. And the reason why I'm so passionate about it, because I was one of those women. I'm not, when I speak and I tell people, I'm not speaking because of something that I read in a book. I'm speaking because I lived it. So I was one of the people who wanted to be loved. So men didn't treat me very nicely. I had low, even though I was very driven some kind of way, I still kind of had the low self esteem. And I think that went back to my being raised in verbal abuse. But I see that a lot, even with adults now, because they're like the reality TV and them wanting to be like other people. That's one thing, but they're trying to live up to, well, I want to be liked. So what is it for me? What do I need to do so that this person can like me, or so that I can get a man, or so that I can get to this level? And just all the wrong things instead of knowing their worth and really looking inside themselves, or they're trying to compete with other people. They're thinking, okay, well, Sally did it this way here, so if she did it and she went to this level, I'm going to do what she did and try to get to where she's at. And that's not how things work, because
Hmm.
what you have to know is what may be Sally's journey is not your journey. Everyone has a path, and what may work well for her is not going to work for you. Everybody has a different walk and a different path to go down. And that's what I try to get women to understand. You have to live your life. You have to look inside yourself and know where you want to go. It's not about competing with someone else.
Absolutely. I've said this before, I'll say it again. There is no win in comparison. Like you cannot win ever because there'll always be somebody that's, quote, better or quote thinner or quote smarter or whatever than you if you really look at it. That's not what your focus should be, though. You have to run your own race, like you said. If you're going to compete with anyone, compete with yourself. That's what I say. Try to be
Yes.
better than you were yesterday or last year or whatever. So, yeah, very well said. And I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to be liked. That's not what we're saying, is that you shouldn't be a likable person. Of course, we all want to live with and work with people that are likable. But what will you do? Will you sacrifice your own self to be liked or to be loved? That is an issue when you are, trading off your morals and your values and who you are as a person in order to please someone, because you'll never please anybody all the time anyway. So
Exactly. And it's all about, like you said, the boundaries. And you have to stand for something. And your morals and how you feel within yourself, you have to be convicted in that and know that, no, you know what? She did that to get where she's at. I'm not doing that. I'm going to walk this walk that I know is true to myself. And that takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of confidence. It takes knowing yourself to get to that point where you don't care about what someone else is thinking or saying about you. And I think a lot of times, especially with women, I think we get caught up in, well, what is someone going to think? What is someone going to say if I do this, if I do that? And you just have to get to a point where you don't care what others are saying because, again, your life is your life. You don't need their approval to do what you need to do in your life.
I think if anything, if you want to follow that train of thought, what you want to do is think about not what they will think or say about you if you do it, but what will you think about it if you don't do it? And what will
Hmm.
you think about at the end of your life, when you're looking back on it? And the end of your life may not be when you're old. So people pass away young every day. And so when you're at the end of your life, do you want to be able to say, I did the best that I could with what I had, and I'm proud of myself? If you can't say that, then that means that you have work to do. And we all have work to do. We all have goals that, we're working toward, but you want in your soul and in your heart to know that you did your very best.
Hmm. Exactly.
How do you define success, Trina? What to you makes you successful? And I don't mean necessarily with your work. Now, it can be a component of your work, but I'm just talking about in general. What do you think of as success for you?
That's a good question. And it's funny because that's one of the questions I ask my guests on my podcast.
That you should
But
know. No.
yeah, I should know. No, but for me, success is having peace, peace in my home, peace of mind, and being happy with myself, being happy with what I have, enjoying my children, enjoying my life. And like I said, it took me a while to get to the point where I am now. And that's why I'm so passionate about inspiring other people. But for a long time, I wasn't happy with myself. And I didn't realize it until I got out of that season, let's just say, of just saying, this is who I am. I like me, my successes, my failures. And I'm at that point now, and it feels really good. And a lot of people, when you ask them the question about success, a lot of people think money or their job or their title. And that's not what success is really about. Because, like you said, at the end of the day, or at the end of my life, or when, the Lord decides to call me home, I want to feel confident that I lived my best life. And that's successfully for me, is living my best life, being true to myself, being happy, and just having peace in my life.
Hmm. I think peace is such an underrated thing. I know this is probably like the subject of a different show, maybe perhaps, but peace is really underrated.
Hmm.
Um, Especially in America. I can't speak for any other country because I've never lived anyplace else. But here in the US, everything is at a breakneck speed, not just with the tech, but just with what people expect of each other. And we as women tend to give, and do, and not necessarily take time for ourselves. And, When we talk about self-care, it's very important to understand that self-care is not selfish.
Hmm.
Self-care seems to be something that people talk about a lot now, and it's almost getting to be cliche, but I hope it doesn't, because we, at least as Americans, need to do better with rest. And peace, and rest go hand in hand. Usually, anyway, they go hand in hand. I know I've seen things sometimes online, and it'll be like, a Saturday or Sunday, and it's like, you know what? I ain't doing nothing today. I'm not working today. There's a lot of people that expect you to work every weekend, and you've already
Hmm.
worked all week. Now, if you haven't worked all week, fine, and I'm not talking to you. But if you've worked all week, you should be able to rest. You should be able to have some time for you and your family. And that's very important. And when you don't have enough rest, whether it's rest as far as like chilling, rest as far as getting enough sleep at night, that is a very basic thing. Oh, yeah, we all know we're supposed to go to sleep at night. We're supposed to get, at least, 7 or 8 hours of sleep every night. But how many of us can really say that we do? Now, I know I do, but I could probably do better, because I know I take my iPad to bed with me and watch YouTube, and perhaps I shouldn't. I probably get better sleep like that. But it's these little changes that we know we need to make in order to, I think, give us the peace that we, like, our souls really seek. And that's why there's so many, books and programs and things now for women about, just calming down a little bit and doing for ourselves, and so that we can have some peace. Because if we say yes to everyone for everything, and volunteer for everything, and do everything our kids want, and do everything our bosses want, we're going to wear ourselves out, and then we're no good to anyone at that point.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. And that's something that we need to realize is, and it's funny because we talk about peace and this, and I'm just going to say this really quick, give a quick story. So, I was in the middle of going through just some different craziness in my life, and one weekend my children had gone with their father, and I was home alone, and like you said, I just said, "You know what? I'm not doing anything this weekend. I need time to detox, to reflect, to just take care of me, the self-care thing, right?" So what I did was that weekend I turned off my phone, I didn't turn on a TV. I just was in silence at home, doing whatever I wanted to do. I slept, I read, just it was so peaceful, and it was funny because I didn't realize how stressed I was and how these things were bringing stress into my life. So when Monday morning came and it was time to go to work, I turned on the news because I used to be a news junkie. I turned on the news, and all of a sudden I felt the tension and the stress come. So it's very important. Sometimes you need to do that. So now I may get up in the morning and watch 30 minutes of news just to get the day started, and then I'm done.
Yeah, and you have to know, I think, what your triggers are. At some point, you have to say, you know what? I know I'm supposed to get enough sleep, or I know that I should say no more often, but I don't. And here's why. I think we have to unpack the reasons behind it. It's not enough to just know what we should do. It's also important for us to recognize the fact that we're not doing something, or that we're allowing something that we shouldn't, and to be able to go back and say, why am I feeling this way? Do I feel obligated to say yes to all these commitments? Why? Do I feel like I owe this person something? Um, do I feel like I won't be liked? Going back to that, if I say no, I mean, we have to really be more proactive and self aware about not just what we're supposed to do, but also why we don't do things. Because that's where, everything is. That's where you're really going to make progress in your life.
Hmm.
I don't know. I just wanted to, that just came from somewhere. I don't know. That's for somebody, Trina.
That's somebody's word. They'll get it.
Now, I got two more questions for you, okay? They're not so deep. All right. So, what is your favorite business resource or hack that you like to use? It can be an app or it can be something else.
Wow. I never thought about that. Well,
Okay, maybe it's
okay.
not easy then.
Okay. Yeah, because I do so much. Well, okay. I have an app. So I use, and just within the last year, I found this app, program, whatever. It's called Notebook by Zoho. And I like it because I can take notes and you can save them like as little stickies, but you can also put them into books like journals. So you can name them whatever. So for example, when I'm doing my podcast, I do a separate sticky, if you will, on each guest, and I write bio and little questions that I have. So even if I'm traveling, because it's web based, I can open that up and add to it and sync on all my devices. So that's probably the one thing that I found that is very useful for me.
Cool. Notebook by Zoho. I never heard of it. See, like that is something. Well, maybe it wasn't an easy question, Trina, but at least it wasn't like super, super deep.
No.
Sometimes we got to come up for air here, after all the gem dropping. And my last question for you is, what would you tell your younger self? What advice, whether it's personal or professional, would you give to the young Trina?
That's a good question. And I have thought about that. I would tell young Trina that you're worthy. You are worthy. You don't have to settle. Because I don't know about you, but I've looked back on my life and in so many situations I settled, whether it was with a relationship or with a job or with even settling with what I could do as far as my performance. I settled, and I would just tell myself that I'm worthy and you don't have to settle.
Wow, that's it right there. I don't have to ask you anything else, Trina. That was it. But some of the things that we touched on are going to be in the show notes for this episode. So you can go there if you're like riding or running or something and you want to go back to those nuggets of wisdom that she left. kickingitwithdoree.com. And Trina, please tell everyone where they can find you and your work and your podcast.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, for speaking, I have a website and it's trinamartin.com. My podcast is Trina Talk and I'm on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all the other places. And if you want to connect with me directly, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook.
Amazing. Thank you so much for kicking it with me, Trina.
Thank you, Doree. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for kicking it with me today on the Kicking It with Doree podcast.